The cold, unyielding waves crashed against the sides of a rusty metal barrel adrift in the vast ocean inside. A terrified mother dog clung to her three tiny puppies, their fragile bodies trembling with cold and fear, with no land in sight and no one to hear their faint cries. The barrel drifted further into the unknown every moment, a cruel gamble with fate, but who would risk such innocent lives and would help arrive in time to save them? Stay with us to uncover the extraordinary journey of survival courage and the power of hope that brought this family back from the brink of despair. The cold night air was filled with the relentless sound of waves slapping against a rusted metal barrel, drifting aimlessly in the open sea inside Daisy. A golden retriever with a once radiant golden coat, now damp and matted, curled herself protectively around her threes. Tiny puppies, the barrel's cramped, suffocating interior, echoed with the soft whimpers of Scout, Sunny, and Lucky. The three puppies trembling with fear and cold, the metallic tang of rust mingled with the salty air, choking Daisy's senses as her heart raced with a mother's desperate need to shield her young. The barrel rocked violently with each wave, its metal walls creaking ominously as if ready to give way to the crushing water at any moment. The lid, loosely secured, allowed slivers of moonlight to pierce the darkness, illuminating Daisy's weary eyes and the fragile forms of her pups. The tiny creatures pressed tightly against her belly, their small bodies seeking warmth and comfort in the only haven they knew. Daisy's ears twitched at every sound, the distant cry of seabirds, the splash of waves against the barrel, the eerie emptiness of the open ocean. Each noise heightened her instinct to protect, though there was little she could do. Her paws scraped helplessly against the slippery floor of the barrel, her muscles taut as she tried to steady herself and her precious cargo. The night before, Daisy had been safe, nestled in the warmth of Nathan's home. She had no warning of the danger that would come, hired by a shadowy organization bent on revenge. A man had crept into Nathan's yard, his intentions clear, but his resolve faltering. He had been ordered to dispose of Daisy and her pups in the most cruel and final way, by drowning them in the unforgiving sea. But as the man looked into Daisy's eyes, glimmering with fear and innocence, his conscience wavered. Instead of hurling them into the ocean, he shoved them into an old metal barrel he found by the dock. His hands trembled as he sealed the lid. Loosely, his muttered words is barely audible over the lapping waves. "Forgive me, I can't do it with a hard push." He sent the barrel rolling into the water, leaving it to drift into the unknown. The barrel pitched and swayed, its motion jarring the puppies, who let out soft cries of confusion. Daisy tightened her body around them, her golden fur a barrier against the freezing air. Seeping through the cracks, her body ached from the effort of keeping still, each movement threatening to tip the precarious vessel and send them all into the icy depths. Scout, the boldest of the puppies, tried to wriggle free, his tiny paws scratching against the metal walls. Daisy gently nuzzled him back into place, her quiet strength reassuring him. Sunny, the smallest and most delicate, let out a faint whimper, her round eyes reflecting her confusion and fear. Lucky, oblivious to the gravity of their plight, squirmed restlessly, his movements adding to the precarious rocking of the barrel outside the sea, stretched endlessly in every direction, its vastness both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The stars above offered little solace, their cold, distant light a stark contrast to the warmth Daisy tried to provide her young. The way waves seemed to toy with the barrel, carrying it further from shore. With each passing moment, Daisy's once bright eyes were now rimmed with exhaustion, but she refused to let her resolve falter. She licked each puppy in turn, her touch a silent promise that she would protect them, no matter the cost. Her ears perked at the faintest of sounds, a splash, a distant call, the whisper of the wind, each one a cruel reminder of the isolation surrounding them. The barrel's rusty seams began to let in tiny trickles of sea water, dampening the floor beneath Daisy's paws. She shifted uncomfortably, her body straining to keep the pups dry. The water was cold, biting at her fur and adding to the already suffocating weight of their dire situation. Yet Daisy's focus never wavered. Her love for her puppies was her only anchor in this vast, indifferent ocean. As the hours dragged on, the horizon began to shift, the inky black sky giving way to faint streaks of grey and pink. The first light of dawn revealed the worn and battered barrel as it bobbed amidst the waves, its surface speckled with salt and rust. Inside, Daisy blinked against the faint glow, her tired eyes scanning the endless expanse for any sign of salvation. The puppies had grown quieter, their small bodies huddled tightly against Daisy's warmth. The rhythmic sound of their breathing was the only comfort in the otherwise oppressive silence. Daisy nudged Sunny gently, encouraging her to stay awake as the cold threatened to lull her into dangerous stillness. The barrel continued its slow, aimless drift, carried by the unpredictable currents of the sea. Every creak and groan of the metal walls seemed to echo Daisy's own fatigue, a haunting reminder of how fragile their situation truly was. Her gaze shifted to the horizon, where the faint outlines of land seemed impossibly far away. What would become of them? Would the rising sun bring hope, or would it simply illuminate the vast, unforgiving expanse of water that threatened to claim them? Daisy's breathing slowed as she closed her eyes for a brief moment, a silent prayer forming in her mind. The waves, relentless and unyielding, carried the barrel onward, leaving Daisy, her pups, and their uncertain fate in the hands of the ocean. Nathan Bennett had always believed that his purpose in life was to speak for those who couldn't. As a child, he'd saved a stray dog from being euthanized, and that singular act of compassion had ignited a passion that would define his future. Now 35, Nathan was a well-known animal rights activist in the coastal city of San Diego. His days were spent uncovering abuse, rescuing neglected animals, and pushing for stronger laws against animal cruelty. His lean frame and weathered hands told the story of a man who worked tirelessly, often putting himself in harm's way for the creatures he loved. Nathan's reputation wasn't just built on goodwill. His investigations into underground dog trafficking rings had exposed powerful figures operating in the shadows. He had worked alongside law enforcement to raid illegal breeding facilities and puppy mills, dismantling networks that profited from suffering. His actions had saved countless animals, but had also earned him the eye of those he exposed. A recent operation was particularly successful and dangerous. Nathan's undercover work had led to the arrest of several key players in a local dog smuggling ring. This group specialized in stealing pets from backyards, breeding them in inhumane conditions, and selling the offspring at a high price. The operation's collapse made headlines, with Nathan hailed as a hero. But behind the scenes, the group's remnants were seething with anger. They vowed revenge, and Nathan became their target. Anonymous threats began to trickle in. Notes shoved under his door, slashed tires, and finally, the disappearance of Daisy. Daisy wasn't just any dog. She was family. Nathan had rescued her 2 years ago, finding her chained in the backyard of an abandoned house. Her condition was dire, emaciated, covered in caries and trembling with fear. At every sound, the scars on her body spoke of years of abuse. But it was the look in her eyes that haunted Nathan most, despite the pain she had endured. Her gaze held a flicker of hope, a silent plea for kindness. Nathan had knelt beside her, speaking softly, as he freed her from the heavy chain that had worn deep grooves into her neck. She didn't resist, only looked at him with cautious trust. carrying her fragile body to his truck. Nathan made a silent promise. You'll never know. Pain again, the journey to recovery was slow. Daisy flinched at raised hands, cowered at loud noises, and hesitated to eat when anyone was near. But Nathan's patience and love began to heal her. He set up a cozy bed for her in his living room, cooked her special meals to rebuild her strength, and spent hours sitting quietly beside her, letting her learn to trust at her own pace. Over time, Daisy blossomed, her coat regained its golden shine, her body grew strong, and her tail wagged freely. She became a symbol of resilience, a living testament to the power of love and second chances. She was not just a pet, she was Nathan's partner, his constant companion in both his work and his quiet moments at home. A year after Daisy's rescue, Nathan was surprised to discover she was pregnant. The thought of Daisy having her own family filled him with joy. He prepared diligently, converting a corner of his home into a whelping area, complete with soft blankets and a heat lamp. Daisy's instincts charred during her pregnancy, and Nathan marveled at her gentle care for herself and the life growing within her. The night Daisy went into labor was unforgettable. Nathan stayed by her side, speaking softly and reassuring her with his presence when the first tiny puppy arrived. Nathan's eyes filled with tears. 3 hours later, Daisy had given birth to 3 healthy, golden-furred puppies. Scout, Sunny, and Lucky, each one was a perfect blend of her strength and grace. The puppies brought an explosion of life to Nathan's home. Scout was the adventurer, often wandering away from the litter to explore. Sunny, with her round eyes and calm demeanor, was a snuggler who loved nestling into Nathan's arms. Lucky, the smallest and most playful, often tumbled over his siblings, earning his name by narrowly avoiding mischief. Daisy was an exceptional mother, never straying far from her pups. Nathan often sat on the floor with them, feeling an immense sense of fulfillment as he watched them play. For the first time in years, his home was filled with laughter, warmth, and the innocent joy only puppies could bring. Nathan often marveled at how far Daisy had come. She was no longer the terrified, broken dog he had found, but a proud mother and a loyal companion. Her journey was a reminder of why he fought so hard for animals, why he put himself risk to expose cruelty. Daisy and her pups were not just survivors, they were symbols of hope, proof that even in the darkest circumstances life could find a way to thrive. But Nathan's happiness made him vulnerable. His enemies knew Daisy was more than just a dog to him, she was his heart. And so on that fateful night, when she and her puppies were stolen, it wasn't just an act of cruelty, it was a calculated blow meant to break him. As Nathan stared at the empty space where Daisy's bed once stood, a hollow ache filled his chest. The house, once alive with the sound of wagging tails and playful barks, now felt eerily quiet. He clenched his fists, vowing to bring Daisy and her puppies home. Little did he know, as he began his desperate search, Daisy was already fighting her own battle for survival, drifting in the cold, unforgiving sea. The frosty morning hair bit at their noses as Max, Emily, and Liam trudged toward the harbor, their breath misting in the cold. The siblings often came here on weekends, drawn by the rhythmic lapping of the waves and the endless wonders the sea could offer. Max, the eldest at 12, led the way with a confident stride, his sharp green eyes scanning the horizon for adventure. Emily, 10, with her auburn hair tucked under a knitted hat, tiara close behind, clutching a small notebook where she sketched. Animals she dreamed of saving. 8-year-old Liam bounced along at the back, his sandy blonde hair sticking out from under his too large coat, his excitement palpable. The harbour was unusually quiet that morning. The usual bustle of fishermen and early risers was muted by the chill in the air as they reached the edge of the dock. Liam stopped abruptly, his eyes widening. "Max, look!" he shouted, pointing toward the water. Max squinted, following his brother's gaze. At first he thought it was just another piece of debris floating on the tide, but then the object shifted, catching the light. "It's a barrel," Max said. His voice tinged with curiosity. Emily stepped closer, shading her eyes against the morning sun. "Why would a barrel be out there?" she murmured. The siblings clambered onto a smaller dock that extended farther into the water, the wooden boards creaking under their feet. The barrel drifted closer with each wave, its rusted surface gleaming faintly in the sunlight as it neared the dock. Liam leaned over his small hands, gripping the edge of the wooden railing. "It's moving," he exclaimed. Max leaned forward cautiously, his sharp eyes catching the faintest of movements through the cracks in the barrel's lid. His heart skipped a beat. "There's something inside," he said, his voice low and serious. Emily gasped, her freckled face pale with worry. "What if I'd an animal?" The barrel bumped gently against the dock's edge, and Max knelt, gripping it firmly to steady it. With careful hands, he began to pry the lid open. The metallic creak of the rusted hinges sent a shiver down Emily's spine as the lid came free. The siblings froze their eyes, whining in unison. Inside, Daisy lay curled tightly around her. 3 puppies, their tiny bodies trembling against her, as if seeking refuge from the biting cold. Daisy lifted her head weakly, her soft brown eyes meeting Max's with a mix of fear and exhaustion. The puppies whimpered faintly, their small cries cutting through the stillness of the harbour. Emily was the first to react. "Oh no, they're freezing," she cried. Dro dropping her notebook and reaching toward the barrel. Daisy flinched slightly but didn't growl. Her body too weak to protest, Emily's voice softened as she spoke, her words meant to soothe. "It's okay, girl, we're here to help." Max placed a steady hand on Emily's shoulder. "We need to be careful, she's scared," he said, his mind raced with what to do next. Turning to Liam, he said firmly, "Run to the harbour office, tell them we need help now." Liam nodded, his usual playfulness replaced by a seriousness that belied his years. "Got it," he said before dashing off, his small figure disappearing into the distance. "Emily, stay with her." Max instructed, his voice calm but commanding. "Talk to her. Keep her calm, I'll go find someone who can help us get them out." Emily nodded her hands, trembling slightly as she reached into the barrel. "You're okay, girl," she whispered. Stroking Daisy's damp fur, the golden retriever's tail gave a faint, tentative wag, as if understanding the girl's intentions. By the time Liam returned, with a harbour worker, Max had flagged down a local fisherman who was helping secure the barrel to the dock. The harbour worker, a burly man named Joe, arrived moments later with blankets in hand. "What do we have here?" he asked, his voice. "Gruff but kind dogs," Max said, pointing into the barrel. "They freezing and I think they're hurt." Joe peered inside, his expression softening as he took in the sight of Daisy and her puppies. "Poor things," he muttered. "Let 'em get them out of there working together." Joe and Max gently lifted Daisy from the barrel, careful not to jostle her or the puppies nestled against her side. Emily quickly draped a blanket over Daisy, her hands moving with surprising confidence. "It's okay," she murmured, her voice steady despite her tears. "You're safe now." One by one, the puppies were lifted out, their small bodies swaddled in warm fabric. Sunny let out a faint whimper, and Emily cradled her close, her freckled cheeks wet with tears. "They so small," she whispered. "How could someone do this to them?" Joe shook his head grimly. "Some people have no heart," he said. "But you kids did good finding them. You may have just saved their lives." As the group worked to warm and comfort the dogs, the harbour buzzed with activity. Word of the discovery spread quickly, and a crowd began to gather. Some brought supplies, bottles of warm water, spare blankets, while others offered quiet prayers for the animals, recovery for Max, Emily, and Liam. The moment was transformative, watching Daisy's fragile trust in them grow. Seeing the puppies begin to stir with renewed energy filled them with a sense of purpose they had never known. Emily in particular felt her love for animals solidify into something more, a calling perhaps to protect creatures like Daisy from harm. Daisy, now slightly more alert, lifted her head to lick Emily's hand, a gesture of gratitude that brought fresh tears to the girl's eyes. "She knows we're trying to help, Emily," said her voice breaking. When the police and animal rescue workers arrived, the siblings recounted their discovery with an earnestness that left no detail untold. Joe helped explain the situation, and the officers nodded grimly as they examined the barrel. "This wasn't an accident," one officer said, his tone serious. "Someone wanted these dogs gone." Max clenched his fists, his green eyes flashing with anger. Who could be so cruel? Emily placed a hand on his arm. "But they're okay now," she said softly. "We found them." The officer nodded, placing a reassuring hand on Max's shoulder. "You did good, kid. We'll figure out who did this," as Daisy and her puppies were loaded into the rescue van. Emily lingered beside the golden retriever, stroking her head gently. "You'll be okay now," she whispered. "I promise." Max watched his sister with quiet pride. Despite her young age, she had shown a bravery and compassion that inspired him. Liam, too, stood taller that day, his usually playful demeanor replaced by a sense of accomplishment as the van pulled away, carrying Daisy and her puppies to safety. The siblings stood together watching until it disappeared from view. They had no way of knowing that their actions that morning would ripple far beyond the harbor, touching lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Nathan's phone buzzed insistently on the desk, pulling him from his restless thoughts. His eyes darted to the screen, and the caller ID made his heart race. It was the police. Without hesitation, he picked up the words, spilling out before he could even process them. Mr. Bennett, the officer on the other end, began, his voice steady. "We believe we found Daisy and her puppies." Nathan's breath caught. Are they okay?" he stammered, gripping the edge of his desk so tightly his neck turned white. "They're safe," the officer assured him. "A group of children found them near the harbor this morning. They're with animal rescue, now being checked over. You can come see them." Nathan didn't wait to hear more. Grabbing his jacket, he bolted out the door, his thoughts a whirlwind of relief, fear, and gratitude. The drive to the rescue center was a blur, every passing second stretching unbearably. Long his mind was filled with images of Daisy, his loyal, gentle companion, and the 3 tiny lives she had fought so hard to protect. When Nathan arrived at the rescue center, a kind Fayak woman greeted him at the door. "You must be Nathan," she said warmly. "They're just inside." Nathan nodded, his voice caught in his throat. He followed her down a brightly lit hallway, his footsteps echoing against the tile floor. The room she led him to was quiet, except for the soft hum of a heater and the faint whimpers of puppies as the door swung open. Nathan froze there. On a blanket spread across the floor lay Daisy. Her once pristine golden coat was matted and dull, her body visibly thinner and marked by exhaustion, but her eyes, those soft, expressive brown eyes, lit up the moment she saw him. "Daisy," Nathan whispered, his voice breaking with a sudden burst of energy. Daisy scrambled to her feet, her tail wagging furiously. Despite her obvious fatigue, she let out a soft, joyful bark as she stumbled toward him, her paws slipping slightly on the smooth floor. Nathan dropped to his knees, arms open as Daisy reached him, burying her head against his chest, Her tail thumped against the floor in a frantic rhythm, her body trembling with relief. Tears streamed down Nathan's face as he held her close, his hands gently stroking her fur. "You're safe," he murmured. "You're okay, I'm so sorry, girl." As Daisy nuzzled against him, 3 small figures wobbled into view behind her. The puppies, their tiny bodies swaddled in blankets, toddled uncertainly toward the reunion. Scout Ever the Bold One reached Nathan first, his curious nose sniffing at Nathan's boots. Sunny followed hesitantly, her big round eyes looking up at him with shy trust. Lucky, the smallest, stumbled and tumbled over his siblings before finally reaching Nathan, letting out a soft, high-pitched yip. Nathan laughed through his tears, reaching out to gently scoop up each puppy. "You little troublemakers," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You gave me quite a scare." The puppies squirmed in his arms, their tiny tails wagging furiously as they nuzzled into his chest. Daisy sat beside him, watching her pups with a maternal pride that hadn't faltered despite their ordeal. The sight of the reunited family brought a renewed wave of tears to Nathan's eyes. The emotional scene drew quiet murmurs from the rescue staff, and others present, even the hardened officers who had been part of the case, couldn't help but smile at the display of pure love between Nathan and his dogs. One of them stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on Nathan's shoulder. "You've got a strong one there," he said, nodding toward Daisy. Nathan nodded, his voice still unsteady. "She's incredible," he said, glancing down at Daisy, who had now rested her head on his knee. The door opened again, and Nathan looked up to see 3 young faces peeking hesitantly inside. Max, Emily, and Liam entered the room, their expressions a mix of excitement and nervousness. The officer who had accompanied them gestured toward Nathan. "These are the kids who found them," he said. Nathan stood, his eyes meeting Max's. "First, you're the ones who saved Daisy and her puppies?" he asked, his voice full of gratitude. Max nodded, his green eyes lighting up. "We saw the barrel near the dock," he said. "We couldn't just leave them there." Emily stepped forward, clutching her sketchbook. Nervously, we tried to keep her calm, she added. She was really scared. Nathan knelt to their level, his expression earnest. "You 3 did something amazing," he said. "You didn't just save their lives, you saved mine too. I can't thank you enough." Liam, who had been hiding slightly behind his siblings, spoke up, his voice small but proud. "They're really cute," he said, pointing toward the puppies. Nathan chuckled, wiping his eyes. "They are, aren't they? And they owe their lives to you?" The room fell into a warm silence as Nathan invited the children to meet Daisy and her puppies. Emily knelt beside Daisy, her freckled face lighting up as the golden retriever licked her hand. "She's so sweet," Emily said softly. Max held Scout carefully, his confidence clear as he cradled the wriggling puppy. Liam, meanwhile, was overjoyed when Lucky playfully nipped at his fingers, eliciting a giggle that filled the room. Nathan watched them with a smile, his heart full. These 3 children, strangers until today, had become unexpected heroes. They had shown a bravery and compassion that reminded him of why he fought so hard for animals like Daisy and her pups. As the visit came to an end, Nathan shook each child's hand firmly. "If there's ever anything I can do for you, let me know," he said. "You'll always be friends of Daisy and her family." Max grinned. "Just take good care of them," he said. "You have my word." Nathan replied. As Nathan prepared to take Daisy and the puppies home, he glanced back at the rescue staff, the officers, and the children who had made this moment possible. "This isn't just about me," he said quietly to himself. "It's about everyone who cares enough to act with Daisy at his side and her puppies snuggled safely in a carrier." Nathan walked out of the rescue center into the crisp afternoon air. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, his heart lighter than it had been in days. The journey wasn't over, justice still had to be served, but for now the family was whole again. And that was all that mattered the morning after the emotional reunion. Nathan sat at his kitchen table. Daisy lying at his feet with her head resting on her paws, the three puppies were curled up together in a small basket. Nearby, their soft snores filling the room with a sense of calm, but Nathan's mind was far from at ease. The relief of having Daisy and her pups back was quickly replaced by a burning determination he needed to ensure that whoever had done this would be brought to justice at the police station. Officers began piecing together the events leading up to the rescue. The children, Max, Emily, and Liam had given detailed accounts of their discovery at the harbour. Max described the moment he spotted the barrel, Emily recounted Daisy's timid but trusting demeanour, and Liam provided a vivid description of the barrel itself, noting its rusted exterior and faint markings. Officers had already retrieved security footage from cameras at the harbour. The grainy video showed a dark van pulling up late at night, its headlights briefly illuminating the dock. A shadowy figure emerged, carrying the barrel to the edge of the water before rolling it off the dock. The footage, though unclear, provided a critical lead. The van's license plate detective, Sarah Mills, a seasoned investigator with a sharp eye for detail, led the case. She briefed Nathan when he arrived at the station to provide his own statement, Wiki running the plate. Now, she said, the footage isn't perfect, but it gives us a starting point. Whoever did this wasn't careful. Nathan nodded, his jaw clenched. I can tell you where to look. Next, he said, sliding a folder across the desk. Inside were notes, photos, and maps, evidence Nathan had collected over months of investigating local dog trafficking. Rings this group has been operating in the area for years. I'm certain they're behind this detective. Mills raised an eyebrow, impressed by the thoroughness of Nathan's work. You've done a lot of the groundwork already, she said. We can use this to connect the dots back at home. Nathan focused on helping Daisy recover. Her ordeal had left her physically weak, but her spirit remained unbroken. Nathan prepared special meals to rebuild her strength, mixing soft proteins with supplements recommended by the vet. He cleaned her fur, gently removing the salt and grime from the sea. Daisy, ever trusting, leaned into his touch, her eyes filled with quiet gratitude. The puppies were also in need of care. Nathan kept them warm with soft blankets and a heating pad, ensuring they stayed hydrated and nourished. Scout, the boldest, was the first to regain his playful energy, pawing at Nathan's hand whenever he came close. Sunny followed soon after, her shy but curious nature emerging as she explored the corners of her new space. Lucky, the smallest, needed the most attention, but his tiny tail wagged fiercely whenever Nathan approached. Their presence brought life back into Nathan's home, filling it with the kind of joy that only animals could provide. Yet every time Nathan looked at Daisy or her pups, he was reminded of the danger they had faced and the fight still ahead. Meanwhile, news of the children's bravery spread quickly through the small coastal town. The local paper ran a story titled "Young Heroes Save Family of Dogs from Certain Death," featuring a photo of Max, Emily, and Liam standing proudly with Daisy and her puppies. The article described their quick thinking and compassionate actions, earning them admiration from neighbors and classmates alike at school. The siblings were showered with praise. Max, usually reserved, found himself at the center of attention, fielding questions about how he had spotted the barrel. Emily was delighted when her teacher asked her to share the story with the class, her love for animals shining through as she recounted the rescue. Liam, ever the cheerful one, proudly told anyone who would listen that he had run to get help. The recognition didn't end there. The local Humane Society invited the siblings to an event honoring their actions. Nathan, who attended with Daisy and the puppies, watched with pride as the children received certificates of appreciation as they stood on stage, beaming with excitement. Nathan felt a deep sense of gratitude for their courage back at the police station. The investigation gained momentum. The license plate from the van LED officers to a rental company, where records showed it had been leased under a fake name. However, a quick cross-reference with Nathan's evidence revealed a potential suspect. A man known for working as a middleman in the dog trafficking ring Nathan had exposed months earlier. Detective Mills shared the breakthrough. "With Nathan, we've identified someone who fits the profile," she said, "with your evidence and the footage. We're building a strong case." Nathan felt a flicker of hope. "If we can take down this group, we can save countless more animals," he said. The detective nodded. "We need you to testify when the time comes," she said. "Your knowledge and first-hand EXP experience are critical." As the investigation pressed on, Nathan remained deeply involved, providing insight and staying in close contact with the authorities. At the same time, he balanced his efforts with caring for Daisy and the puppies, ensuring they felt safe and loved after their harrowing experience late at night. As he sat in his living room with Daisy curled up beside him, Nathan reflected on the journey so far. The scars on Daisy's body were a reminder of the cruelty she had endured, but her unwavering trust in him was proof of her resilience. The puppies, now growing stronger by the day, represented hope, a new generation free from the horrors their mother had faced. Nathan knew the fight against animal cruelty was far from over, but with the support of people like Max, Emily, Liam, and the dedicated officers working on the case, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together they would continue to stand up for the voiceless, ensuring that Daisy's story was just the beginning of a much larger movement for change. The operation to bring down the dog trafficking ring had been in the works for weeks, with Nathan's evidence and the new leads from the investigation. The police finally had enough to act on a cold, clear morning. Detective Sarah Mills gathered her team at the station, briefing them on the details of the raid. Their target, a secluded DID warehouse on the outskirts of San Diego, known for its shady activities but never definitively linked to any crimes until now. The convoy of police vehicles rolled through the empty streets, their lights flashing silently to maintain the element of surprise. At the lead, Detective Mills sat with her jaw set, her eyes scanning the horizon as they approached the warehouse. Officers donned bulletproof vests and prepared for what could be a dangerous encounter. Nathan had wanted to join, but his role as a civilian witness kept him at the station. He paced nervously, Daisy at his side as updates trickled in. The thought of what might be uncovered in that warehouse made his stomach churn. He couldn't bear to think of the animals that might still be suffering. Inside at the warehouse, the officers moved swiftly. Breaking through the locked gates, they stormed the premises, then voices echoing through the cavernous space. Inside, the scene was both chaotic and heartbreaking. Cages stacked haphazardly held dogs of all breeds and sizes, their frightened eyes reflecting the harsh light of the officer flashlights. The traffickers, caught off guard, scrambled to escape, but the police were prepared quickly, apprehending several key members of the operation. Among them was the man identified as the middleman in Nathan's evidence, a figure who had eluded justice for years. His capture marked a significant victory for the investigation. Hours later, Nathan was called to the station to review the findings. Detective Mills greeted him with a tired but triumphant smile. "We got them," she said simply, "and thanks to you, we're going to make sure they face justice." Nathan was led into a briefing room where photos and reports were spread across a table. The detailed tales were staggering records of illegal sales evidence, of inhumane breeding practices, and dozens of rescued animals, all of whom would now receive care and a chance at new lives. As Nathan flipped through the photos, his emotions wavered between anger and relief. The images of scared, neglected dogs brought back painful memories of Daisy's early days, but knowing they were now safe gave him hope. The news of the raid spread quickly through the community. Local media hailed it as a major breakthrough, and Nathan's role in providing evidence was highlighted in the coverage. But Nathan was quick to redirect the praise. "This wasn't just me," he told reporters. "This was a collective effort. The children who found Daisy, the officers who acted swiftly, and everyone who cared enough to speak up. They're the real heroes." Max, Emily, and Liam became minor celebrities in their town. Their story of discovering Daisy and the puppies inspired countless others, with many reaching out to thank them or share their own stories of rescuing animals. Nathan visited their school to personally thank them in front of their classmates, presenting each of them with a framed photo of Daisy and her puppies as a token of gratitude. "You reminded us all that even small actions can have a big impact. Nathan said, his voice steady but emotional, because of you. Not only was my family saved, but so many other lives were too." One evening, Nathan stood on his porch, Daisy lying contentedly at his feet, while her puppies tumbled playfully in the yard. The stars above were bright, and the air was crisp, carrying the faint sound of the ocean in the distance. For the first time in weeks, Nathan felt a sense of peace. But he knew the fight wasn't over. The dismantling of the trafficking ring was a victory, but there were still countless animals out there in need of help. Nathan resolved to continue his work now with a stronger network of support and a community more aware of the issues. As Daisy nudged his hand with her nose, Nathan smiled and knelt to scratch behind her ears. "We did it, girl," he said softly, "but this is just the beginning." Daisy's tail thumped against the wooden porch, her eyes meeting his with a book of trust and love that spoke volumes for Nathan. Her resilience and the joy of her puppies were all the motivation he needed to keep going together. They would face whatever challenges lay ahead, proving that even in the darkest shadows, light could prevail. Nathan stood in his backyard, watching the golden rays of the setting sun cast a warm glow over Daisy and her 3 puppies. The yard, once quiet and orderly, was now alive with energy. Scout was chasing a butterfly, his small paws kicking up patches of grass, while Sunny watched with cautious curiosity. Lucky, the smallest but most spirited, tumbled in playful rolls, his tail wagging furiously. Daisy lay nearby, her watchful eyes following her puppy's every move. Her calm demeanor spoke of a peace she had not known in a long time. For Nathan, this moment was a balm for his soul. The battle to save Daisy and her puppies had been hard fought, but seeing them safe and happy reminded him why he had chosen this path. The next morning, Nathan sat at his desk, the sunlight streaming through the window. Daisy lay at his feet, her head resting on his lap. Nathan opened his laptop and began typing, recounting the journey that had brought them to this point. His words flowed with a mix of pain and hope, detailing the cruelty Daisy had endured, the bravery of 3 young heroes, and the collaborative effort that had brought justice to those who had harmed her. He shared the story on his blog, social media, and forums dedicated to animal welfare. "This isn't just Daisy's story," he wrote. "It's a story about the resilience of animals, the power of community, and the importance of standing up for those who cannot fight for themselves." The response was overwhelming. Messages of support and gratitude poured in from people across the country. Some shared similar stories of rescues, while others pledged to adopt or support local shelters. The story of Daisy and her puppies became a beacon of hope, inspiring individuals and communities to take action against animal cruelty. Max, Emily, and Liam became frequent visitors to Nathan's home. Their bond with Daisy and the puppies had grown unshakable since the rescue. Max often helped Nathan with yard work, while Emily sketched portraits of the puppies, her artistic talent capturing their playful spirits. Liam, true to his nature, spent most of his visits tumbling around with the puppies, his laughter echoing through the yard. Nathan welcomed their presence, recognizing that these 3 children had not only saved Daisy, but had also become a source of joy and inspiration for him. "You kids are part of this family." Now he often told them, his voice filled with sincerity. The children in turn felt a newfound sense of purpose. Their actions had shown them the impact of kindness and bravery lessons they carried with them in their daily lives. Meanwhile, the justice system worked swiftly to address the crimes of the dog trafficking ring. The individuals arrested during the raid faced harsh sentences, their inhumane practices laid bare for the world to see. The court's decision sent a strong message reaffirming the community's commitment to protecting its most vulnerable members. Nathan attended the trial as a witness, his testimony helping to seal the fate of those responsible. When the verdict was announced, he felt a deep sense of closure. Justice had been served, and the ripple effects of the case would likely deter others from engaging in similar acts of cruelty. The story of Daisy and her puppies continued to unite the community. Donations poured into local shelters, adoption rates soared, and volunteers stepped forward to support animal welfare initiatives. Schools invited Nathan to speak his presentations, inspiring young minds to value compassion and responsibility. Max, Emily, and Liam were often by his side during these talks, sharing their first-hand account of the rescue. Their voices, filled with the earnestness of youth, did a layer of authenticity that touched every audience they addressed. The trio became local heroes, their actions sparking a movement that brought the town closer together, from bake sales to fundraisers. The community rallied around the K, turning Daisy's story into a catalyst for change. One quiet evening, Nathan sat on his porch, Daisy by his side. The puppies were asleep inside their tiny bodies, curled up in a warm pile. The stars above twinkled brightly, a reminder of the vastness of the world and the small but meaningful part they all played in it. Nathan placed a hand on Daisy's head, her fur soft beneath his fingers. "We've been through a lot, haven't we, girl?" he said softly. Daisy looked up at him, her brown eyes filled with trust and love. Her tail thumped gently against the porch, as if to say, "We did it together," as sat there. Nathan allowed himself to dream about the future. There was still so much work to be done, animals to save, minds to change, and battles to fight. But for now, he was content to bask in the warmth of the moment, surrounded by the love and hope that Daisy and her puppies had brought into his life. The story of Daisy and her family wasn't just a tale of rescue and redemption, it was a testament to the power of compassion and the strength of community. And as Nathan gazed out at the horizon, he knew that their story was far from over. Together, they would continue to spread the flame of hope, lighting the way for others to follow. Daisy's story reminds us of the resilience of life, the power of love, and the profound impact of compassion. Just as Daisy found hope in the darkest moments, we too can trust that God's grace is at work, even when the path seems uncertain. Through the courage of 3 children, the dedication of a community, and the unwavering bond between Nathan and Daisy, we see the beauty of how faith and kindness can transform lives. Let us remember that every small act of love, whether rescuing a stray, standing up for the voiceless, or simply showing kindness to those in need, is a reflection of God's light in the world. Together, we can be His hands and feet, bringing healing and hope to all His creatures. As you reflect on this story, may God bless you and your loved ones with His endless grace and remind you of the beauty in every life, no matter how small or forgotten. If Daisy's journey touched your heart, we invite you to share this story with someone you care about. Let's spread the message of hope and faith, inspiring others to believe in the power of love and community. Comment below with your thoughts, or share your own story of kindness. We'd love to hear how God's love has worked in your life together. Let's continue to believe in hope, share compassion, and walk in God's light.